All right, hello everyone. So today we have a student. His name is Edward. And Edward, can you actually go ahead and just introduce yourself?
My name's Edward Chang, and I'm majoring in physics and computer science in Citrus College right now, and I'm
All right,
hoping to transfer to a UC.
all right, awesome. So Edward, so obviously with your specific major, can you just explain why you decided to choose that specific field?
Well, halfway through my high school, I transferred to a new high school, and it was an art school, and it kind of made me realize that I didn't like arts, and I was actually pretty good at math and science, so that's what kind of made me choose it.
Okay. But was there any specific reason, going into computer science and physics? And because obviously those are two very intensive and demanding fields, in STEM. So why specifically, I guess, computer science and physics?
Physics just always has been really fun for me, and I've been tinkering with computer science projects since I was really little, so that's why I chose them.
All right, awesome. So now, obviously, Edward, you mentioned that you're attending Citrus College, and for those that don't know much about it, it's a community college in the Southern California area. So we just want to know why specifically did you choose to go into a community college system first?
Well, I got accepted to a few universities, but when I saw the price, I just didn't want to put that burden on my parents
Hmm.
or take out the loans.
Okay. And then, so obviously, you mentioned that you have planned to eventually transfer into a UC school afterwards. So do you think that choosing the community college route, other than the factors of tuition, will still help you achieve your end goals of getting into a UC or whatever your future passions are?
I'm sorry. Wait, let me.
Oh, all good. Yeah, so just to repeat that. So basically, like we mentioned that you chose community college because of tuition. And obviously you said that you have ambitions to go into a UC system
Yeah.
school later in the future. So do you think that community college will still help you reach that end goal?
Yes, I actually do. Community colleges are pretty nice because you can feel it's actually a pretty good growth opportunity. While you can get to stay at home, and if you weren't that outstanding in high school, you can really grow into college in a community college.
Mhm. Now, I know this is something that obviously both of us are pretty passionate about talking, the idea that there's this whole stereotype around community college that it's meant for people who couldn't succeed in high school, or, the quote unquote, they call it like the not as smart people would go into community college. And how do you feel about that stereotype? And do you think that that's something that should be broken down in high school?
No, I don't. I think that's fairly accurate. I mean, with my case, I had almost like a 3.0 GPA,
Mhm.
and I was kind of a failure in high school. And I don't think it's a bad stereotype. It's just some people are just late bloomers, and I think community college gives them a chance to bloom into whatever they're going to be.
Mhm.
And I think it's important that people know that high school isn't your only chance to get somewhere in life.
Yeah, and I actually really like that statement where you mentioned late bloomers. There are some of us who the high school isn't meant for everyone, obviously, and super challenging. And I like how you mentioned that it's like, and from before you mentioned that you get that chance to really improve like human growth and to succeed in the future. And I really think that's actually a really interesting take on it for it. So yeah, so I guess moving on to the college application process, if we were to take a step back, to about roughly a year ago when we were applying to college, I guess first and foremost, how did you feel about the college application process? Like if I were to just have you briefly summarize it super fast, how would you explain it?
I think it's honestly a bit tedious, but I mostly applied to public schools like UCs and Cal States. The UCs were pretty hard for the application process because we had to write a bunch of um, what personal insight questions.
Hmm.
And for some of the common app schools, the essays were kind of hard. So, but the
Yeah,
Cal
for
States are easy, and yeah, some schools are easy for their applications.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. A lot of the schools vary in essays, and I think that's one of the biggest things that most students worry about, the essays, because finding time to write about them. So I guess going to it. I mean, talking more for your specific story, how you changed schools. Do you think transferring from a regular public institution to a more private like art school during high school played a factor into how your perception of college and this entire process went for you?
I think it probably didn't. In fact, it just kind of cemented my views that college was really important
Interesting.
because I could see like a huge change in the atmosphere. In Arcadia, a bunch of people were really academically focused, and you could see like their parents, most of them are pretty successful because they know to push their kids because they've went through the experience themselves of like how much an education has helped them in society. But when I went to the art school, most of the parents were either underprivileged or I don't, yeah, they just weren't as educated.
Okay, so it wasn't like the I guess the standard held in two different schools was a lot different. Well, at least for you, you experienced two different kind of environments, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it, the people at the art school were so uneducated. It was pretty hard to talk to them. So
Really.
that kind of cemented my views about how important college was.
Interesting. And what do you like? I guess just to briefly touch on it, like, what do you mean by uneducated? As in terms of like didn't take school as seriously enough, or they didn't like? I guess yeah, they weren't taking school as serious enough, or was it something else?
I guess it's just that they didn't value academics.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind because I feel like every school district across the entire country is very different. We all have different views on the education system, and for you to, especially you experienced two different worlds. One where students were super into academics, and one where obviously going to an art school, there's a lot more emphasis on the arts, which
yeah,
some would argue can be as challenging as academics, but it's something that not exactly the same kind of field per se. So I think that's definitely an interesting viewpoint towards it. So I guess another thing regarding college application was, getting the information and kind of the understanding of what to do during the entire process. So when you were trying to research about colleges or figure out how to do certain things, what was your main source of information? Was it the internet? Was it through school resources, upperclassmen, your friends or family? What was your main way of getting, yeah, like I said, research and information about college?
most of my information came from U.S. news, and then I went on there and looked up the college websites, and that's where I got all the numbers, like their average GPA,
Mhm.
acceptance rate, whatnot, and like cost, everything. So I got most of my stuff from the internet.
Okay, awesome. And actually, I like how you mentioned those rankings on those college websites, and how they talk about average GPA and stats. And how important do you think it is to actually consider those numbers? I know a lot of students, they think that, oh, they see those numbers and they immediately get scared of wanting to apply to that school because the numbers and averages are super high. So what's your personal opinion on looking at those statistics?
I think it's important to take into account like don't be too unrealistic. Like if you don't have a 4.0 GPA, you probably shouldn't apply to Stanford or Harvard unless you have some sort of really outstanding achievement, like you're a CEO of a company or something. I don't know.
Okay.
But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, most of the time you should take into account, but you don't have to make your decision solely based on those. Because
Yeah.
the essays are actually probably a big factor in it too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, that is definitely a good point. A lot of people are scared to say it that they wouldn't admit that, obviously GPA and SAT, ACT, they aren't everything. But to some extent, when you see the actuality of it, I would say the vast majority of people are usually ones that follow through those conventions. That's why we have
Yeah,
those averages and whatnot. But then again, there are some kids who still are able to do amazing things other than extracurriculars or whatnot and still get in. But yeah, I think staying realistic and being honest with yourself is an important part as well too, and not just subjecting into peer pressure, which is
yeah.
actually another thing I wanted to touch up on. Especially, like we mentioned, you went to one school that was more academically challenging than another. What was the social environment like? Like everyone else's perception towards college, was it super competitive or intense, or was it relatively laid back and cooperative?
In Arcadia, I think everyone wanted to get to like the top UCs, right? But
Yeah.
so that was a pretty intense thing because I couldn't do academics in high school. But when I went to the art school, they were super supportive of everything. Like even if you just were going to community college, they would be proud of everything.
Hmm.
But crap, what was the question again?
Oh yeah, so I guess like what was the difference? And I guess actually I was gonna follow up with to expand on it. Which environment do you think you would have preferred to help you succeed for college?
Oh, I honestly, um, I would prefer the more intense one, Arcadia,
Really?
because yeah, I actually felt like no, actually, I think I'd take the art school one because
Oh,
I felt more outstanding there. Like I was smarter than most of those people, and in Arcadia, I was kind of mixed in with everyone else.
interesting. So you would rather take an environment where you would have been able to stand out more rather than kind of like, I guess, fit in the crowd.
Yeah,
And then would you say that's just more of something like, more of your like personal ideology, or is it something that you think is something realistic you have to take into account?
I think it's just my personality. I like to be the smartest one in the room.
I don't know. I definitely feel you on that in certain cases. But yeah, I think that's definitely a good point as well too. There's definitely different environments. I guess, speaking a little bit outside of those personal ideology and a little more into this, um, regardless of, whether you were the smartest person or not, would you have preferred like competition or cooperation?
I would prefer probably a mix of both because a little bit of competition really helps and it gives you like a goal to shoot for, but too much just isn't really healthy.
Mm. Okay, yeah, no, for sure. I definitely understand that. And I guess just to wrap up the entire college application aspect of this, I would say that if you could have changed anything, or if you could fix any of the regrets you've had from the college application process, what would it be?
I would probably say I would have started my essays earlier
Mm.
because studying them late, I had to like I crammed them in like the last week, so they weren't that good. And I would
Oh,
have
okay.
planned like well in advance to have them done at least a month before.
Okay, so you would just say like, I guess, like time management and
Yeah.
particularly with the essays.
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. And yeah, I think, that would obviously conclude the college application portion of it. So I guess let's transition a little bit more into talking about what you've done in college so far, like, kind of your lifestyle there. So I guess first and foremost, obviously in community college, it's not the same as a four-year university. You don't get the same experiences with like dorming or maybe the same like lifestyle routines of what you can do on campus compared to other students. But I guess just first and foremost, what would you say was something that you got to do in college that you weren't able to do back in high school or even around your town?
Oh, just choosing my own class schedule so that I could manage my own time. Like, I always have my Fridays free, and
Okay.
two out of the 5 days of the week I have afternoons completely empty. So I guess it's really different because I get to study and manage my own time the way I want to instead of having a like everyday 8 to 2 schedule at school.
Okay, interesting. So it's like kind of like that added liberty in,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, dictating your own schedule. All right, awesome. And then I guess another thing about college, being community college, there's obviously it's a smaller class population compared to many of the private and public universities out there. So how are your class sizes? Are they relatively large or like pretty small, like 30 people classes?
For most of my classes, the class sizes are actually pretty small. They're about 20 to 30. Sometimes they're like 15. But
Okay.
for the classes that are more in demand, there's up to anywhere up to 77 people
Oh, wow.
or more maybe.
Mhm.
But that's just the most I've had in my classes.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel, I think it's way different from, from what I've had. I've had classes where we would have almost like 100 to even
Oh,
200 students. Yeah, it was like almost 250 people max in a single lecture room. And, would you say, obviously in high school, it's pretty similar to your classes. We have roughly, 30 people in a class in high school. And for you, it's, averaging roughly around the same. And would you say you still prefer that smaller classroom environment? Like, do you get to engage with the professor a lot more?
yeah, I'd say I prefer um, the smaller class sizes because it just feels more personalized and the professor can help you through things. And yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Now, I guess another thing is, I mentioned this earlier. Being a community college student, you don't get the same dorming experience as many private school or even public school university students get to do. And I guess just first and foremost, how is it like, still living at home and going to school? And, do you ever worry about not getting the same college experience as other people?
I do worry about that, but at the end of the day, I don't really care. I don't like people that much. most people just kind of piss me off.
Okay.
But
But yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
would rather. I would. I think I am missing out on like the sports and like the activities you would get at a university and dorming.
Mhm.
But I'm fine. I don't like spending my own money anyway.
I see. So what's it like? Are you still able to manage college courses while still work being at home?
Yeah, I think I manage them pretty well. I actually spend most of my time at the school in the library
Mhm.
before this whole COVID thing. So I got most of my work done there.
Mm.
And I did clubs and extracurriculars, so I mean, it's okay. It's
All
not
right,
too
perfect.
bad.
And yeah, actually, let's I guess expanding onto those extracurricular activities. Can you actually expand on what are the activities you're doing in college and whatnot? Given that a lot of students in I guess for example, for me being at USC, there's obviously a lot more clubs and programs that we would have compared to a school like yours because of, the size difference is huge. So, what are some clubs that you're able to participate in?
Well, there's a few honor societies that help you with the transfer pro transfer process to like a higher tier UC, and I go to their meetings once in a while, and we have volunteering activities, and they have food banks that you can volunteer at, and I just sometimes I do projects with some of my friends in my class.
Okay, that's pretty good. And do you
Yeah,
think that being in those things, you still get to see like a new group of people and still actually socialize with people that were different from ones that you've met in high school?
yeah, definitely. There's a much wider range of ages in college now. Because in high school, everyone was about the same age. But here you can see adults and people who are coming back to college, and it's just a really different experience from high school.
And yeah, and what would you say would be like the biggest like takeaway you get from, talking with other people? Is it like experience or like just hearing different perspectives? So what would you say was the, biggest lesson that you've learned from all of that?
Probably just stay in college. You don't have to leave college and come back because a lot of people regret doing that because that's like 10 years or so of their life wasted, according to them, not me.
Okay, I think that's a really interesting concept. And I guess, just to wrap up the entire video, so if you could give advice to high school students, whether that be about college application, the college lifestyle, or just general life advice, what would that be?
I'd probably say, cherish your moments, obviously. You don't have to kill yourself in high school. There's always another chance.
Mhm.
If you do fail in high school, you should consider community college. It's pretty nice. But of course, while doing college apps, you should plan ahead. Don't procrastinate.
Mhm.
And I had one more, but I forgot. I'll just text it to you later.
Okay, sounds good. I can include it. But yeah, obviously, so I think for people watching this, it's a pretty, at least with you, obviously, knowing you as a person, you're pretty honest in what you're saying, and I think it was really nice to have like, a genuinely honest approach to it because there are students who, for the most part, probably don't share the same thing as you, but then there will be other people that do have the same opinions and ideology. So it's really nice to see like how different your perspective was towards this and how you've um, pretty much approached the entire situation, especially with your experience being in like different schools and whatnot. But yeah, so obviously we hope to everyone watching this that they got a lot of information from it. And yeah, thanks so much for being a part of it.
Yeah, no problem.